Section 3, Freedom of Speech. Types of speech. Free speech includes verbal expression of thought and opinion, and symbolic speech, using actions and symbols. Because symbolic speech involves action, it may be limited by government restrictions that do not apply to free speech. Government can regulate or forbid symbolic speech if it falls within the constitutional power of government, if it is narrowly drawn to further a government interest not related to suppressing speech, or if it leaves open enough other channels of communication. Regulating speech. The rights of free speech must be balanced against the need to protect society. Free speech may be limited when it clearly presents an immediate danger, as in the Shinnick case of 1919. Free speech can be restricted even though it only tends to lead to illegal action. This is referred to as the bad tendency doctrine, given society's need to maintain public order. The court has ruled that the First Amendment freedoms have a preferred position because they are more fundamental than other freedoms. Laws limiting them are presumed unconstitutional. That literally means that any law that is passed that would restrict free speech would have to be proven to have a very legitimate reason. The presumption is that the law would be unconstitutional unless it can be proved otherwise. The court has held that people are free to speak out in support of political objectives. However, free speech does not protect those who advocate immediate and specific acts of violence. Other speech that is not protected. The First Amendment does not protect defamatory speech. Defamatory speech includes slander or spoken words and libel or written words and false and damaging statements about someone. So, in other words, if you spread a rumor against somebody that you know to be false, that speech, you cannot claim free speech to protect your right to damage their reputation in that way. They could file a suit against you for damages that are caused. And the same thing can be done, let's say a newspaper prints an article about somebody that makes claims that the newspaper knows is false. It could be sued, once again, for libel. Now, public officials and public figures in general are excluded from the right to sue for slander in order to preserve an individual's right to criticize the government. So generally speaking, public officials and even public figures have less protection. It is much harder for them to sue for libel or slander. One case was many years ago. We had a congressman from our local area named Gary Condit. And Gary Condit was believed to have had an affair with a young Washington intern named Chandra Levy. Chandra Levy was murdered. She disappeared initially, and there was a lot of suspicion that Condit may have had something to do with her disappearance. Ultimately, they ended up arresting an illegal immigrant and charging him with her murder, and he ended up being convicted. But the damage done to Condit was already done. At one point in time, he was almost untouchable. He was a Democrat, but he was kind of a moderate Democrat that had a lot of bipartisan support. After that, he was really kind of a pariah. Nobody would have anything to do with him. He did file a lawsuit against some of the news media, but for libel, but he was unsuccessful in his claim. Because once again, there's a great deal of latitude given with regards to public officials. Fighting words or speech that is intended to provoke violence are not protected. So as if you're deliberately trying to provoke somebody into a fight, that is not protected speech. School authorities can regulate students' free speech at school events and during school activities.